StudyIQ IAS, आपका सिलेक्शन हमारा मिशन.
Welcome to this session on Indian philosophers. We've discussed Western philosophers and we started by discussing philosophers like Chanakya, Raja Ram Mohan Roy during the previous sessions. Today we'll be discussing another very important philosopher who worked on ethics, who has his own ideas of religion, and in this context, nobody more important than Swami Vivekananda. But before I come to Swami Vivekananda, let me touch upon the fundamental principles of philosophy throughout the centuries. As I have mentioned in my previous sessions also, there are three levels at which most of the philosophers worked on. One was at the spiritual level. The other one was at the intellectual level. And the third one was at the material level, that is senses. This is important to understand because each philosopher focused on one aspect of this. When we spoke of Plato, Aristotle and Socrates, they were more concerned about the spiritual aspect of it. It was more in the realm of spirituality, not in the sense it is understood now in India, but in the larger context of the larger world that they were talking of. Hence, Plato talked about utopia. Then we came to the intellectual level where we discussed Immanuel Kant, where reason was the dominant factor in his philosophy. And then we had the materialistic in the form of utilitarians. When we discussed Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, he tried to combine all this, but for him the dominant force was the reason. In fact, he found that religion itself could be explained rationally. So, for him, the dominant force was intellectual. Today, the philosopher that we have, Swami Vivekananda, also looked at all three aspects. For him, there was no disconnect between the spiritual, the intellectual and the material. As we'll go along, we'll understand that he tried to bring this all together because he believed in the basic principle of unity. Unity of spiritual part, the intellectual part and the material part. There were some philosophers who later on also who talked only of spirituality and the disconnect between material and spirituality. For Vivekananda, there was no such disconnect. There was actually a unity. With these words, let's see what Swami Vivekananda had to say. The core philosophy of Swamiji was Advaita Vedanta. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of Advaita Vedanta, but briefly speaking, he said there was one source that determined everyone else. And everyone else, whether material or otherwise, was part of that source. So there was no disunity between the source and what was visible here. So every human being or every material was part of that one. And that is why there's just one. And there was no duality in it. And that's the Advaita philosophy that he has, that every human being is a part of a larger conscience. The larger framework that we have, the larger source of energy that we have, everyone is a part of that. And hence, he believed in non-dualism and Advaita Vedanta. Around this time also, there was the dualist part, the Dvaita Vedanta, meaning thereby that the Almighty or the God, or whatever you call, was different from human beings. And to reach there was a different approach altogether. But Swami Vivekananda was very clear in his mind, and he believed that we are all one. And that's why he talked in terms of non-dualism. It is this oneness of all human beings that brings him to his whole understanding of ethics. So if all human beings are a part of that one, then obviously there can't be any hatred towards anybody else. If there is, then you are hating the Almighty because everyone is a part of that. That is his fundamental philosophy. Harm to anyone is harm to oneself, because by harming anybody else, you are harming that larger entity of which we are a part, and hence we all stand to lose by harming somebody else. So he believed in this sort of a unity of all human beings. When he talked about religion also later on, he was very clear in his mind that though religions may take different form and different names, they emanated from a single source. And so the paths may be different, but the ultimate objective is the same. The manifestations may vary, but the basic content is the same. The basic spirit is the same. And that is what his philosophy was all about. When he talked of morality or ethics, For him, there were four major principles that he talked about. And these are interrelated principles. He talked about truth, he talked about unity, he talked about unselfishness, and he talked about divinity. These are a couple of his quotes, but let me explain these four interrelated aspects of his understanding of morality. He said, truth does not merely mean that it is in one way or in the manifested way that a truth should be there. The person should have fundamental integrity. He should be honest always. So it's not that it's something which is visible or it is presented towards somebody else. You have to be fundamentally honest. You have to be fundamentally true to yourself all times, for all times. If you are truth because you are a part of the larger whole, if you believe in this truth, you will be moral. But if you don't believe in this truth, you can't be moral, you would be immoral. Again, the concept of unity that was explained earlier, since all human beings are a part of a larger system, a larger whole or larger creation, then there has to be a unity. And unity has to be both in terms of whether truth or unity, in terms of your external self or internal self. Something which Mahatma Gandhi subsequently also said, that if your thoughts are incorrect, your actions cannot be correct. Your actions will be correct because there is a relationship between how you think and how you act. You can't obviously act correctly if you think wrongly, and there is this unity between your thought process and your action. That's what he talks here. The third aspect is very important. The unselfishness also emanates from unity. You are unselfish because when you are trying to help somebody, you are trying to help yourself. If you are trying to harm someone else, you are harming yourself. So all these concepts are actually interrelated. So unselfishness to Swami Vivekananda was very fundamental to being moral. He says that that which is unselfish is moral. Once you are thinking only of yourself, and you think of yourself only if you don't see yourself as a part of a larger whole. If you're not part of that and you're standing outside, then of course it can't be moral. Since you are a part of a larger whole, anything wrong that you do is doing wrong to that larger whole. And finally, divinity. Now, divinity for him was that you should have a faith and you should have a belief. You should have not only faith on yourself, but in a divine dispensation, in a divine power. Again, emanating from the same unity, that you are part of the divine. And you can't have just faith in the divine and not faith in yourself. In fact, he later goes on to explain very clearly that if you do not have faith in yourself, how will you succeed in life? You have to have that conviction that what you are doing is right, so long as you're doing right. But that faith in yourself is extremely, extremely important for Swami Vivekananda. Vivekananda ji also, he was very concerned with the lack of education or illiteracy in the society at that point in time. And he was very clear in his mind that it is through education that you can enable people to evolve, you can enable people to realize this potential. Without education, it would not be possible. Now, this is something which also you could see in what Plato said. Teaching is nothing from outside. You are enabling a person to learn, something which Plato also said, that it is not that you get to learn things from outside. They are inherent in you. The teacher only guides you to understand yourself. And that is what Swamiji also said, to enable this teacher to learn, as no one can teach anybody. It's not a question of telling anybody, it is enabling him, creating an environment where the person who's trying to learn, who's trying to educate himself or herself, is able to do that. It's the enabling environment that he was more concerned about. And the job of the teacher was not to teach, but to enable the child to teach. More importantly, because if you're telling as an external person, you're teaching somebody, there could be some reservation in the individual there. But if you enable him, he will evolve, learn and accept what he's trying to discover within himself. So the objective should be to be on his own feet. Again, going back to the fundamental concept that every individual has that potential in him. Why? Because he's a part of a larger whole. And that larger whole is all powerful, all enabling, and you are a part of that. The moment you realize that aspect in yourself, you become a better person. And that is what it leads to. It leads to bringing out the strength. It is not providing strength. It is the strength that exists in the individual, and you realize the potential of that and you become strong. This education is important because life itself is a bit of a struggle. Now, how do you manage that struggle? How do you overcome the problems that you have? It is through education that you do that. So once you equip yourself, you become strong and you are able to manage that. And to still philanthropy, again, the philanthropy aspect comes from the term that I used earlier, the unselfishness part. For him, this is a very fundamental attribute, unselfishness. This philanthropy that he's talking of here is born out of this understanding of unselfishness. For him, morality is being unselfish. Again, unselfishness itself is based on the concept, since you are a part of a unity, of a larger whole, being unselfish is helping yourself, because you are helping yourself. Nobody is apart from you, you are a part of a larger whole, and by helping somebody, you are helping yourself. It is a sin to preach poor and hungry. Poor and hungry must be fed and then taught. For him, it was very important that we should feed everyone and he should then be taught. Every education should pay back to the society. So at that point in time, there were very few people who were educated. So what Swamiji was saying was that each individual who has been educated owes it back to the society and they should educate others. Swamiji, like Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, was extremely concerned both about education as well as women. I mean, they were very similar in nature. In fact, Swamiji's a number of concepts that he picked up were from Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, though there was a bit of a difference. Whereas Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was against idolatry. He was totally against it. Swamiji said, that's absolutely fine. If somebody wants to reach the Almighty using a medium of an idol, there is nothing wrong with it. Whereas Dr. Ram Mohan Roy was totally against it. Dr. Swamiji understood the limitations of human beings in being able to connect with the Almighty, connect with the larger conscience. So, if there was to be a medium, that medium could have been that idol through which he could reach to the larger power. The other thing that was very important before we come on to women was also that Swamiji was aware of the fact that people live in a material world. So, there was this material world and there was this spiritual world. There was these two extremes. He argued that you don't have to give up material world to become a spiritual. And the Western materialism also he was against, total materialism. He said that there is no disconnect between the two. You can have both. You can enjoy the material world yet become spiritual. That is something he was expounding even when he went to the West. He was talking about bringing the East and the West together. What was it? The spirituality of the East and the material of the West. It is not the denial of one that you get to become spiritual. You have to have both. And this again is in consonance with what he talked about, idolatry. He was not against idolatry. He was okay with people using idols to reach spirituality, whereas Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was totally against idolatry. Coming to women again, he said that women are extremely critical for development of any society. And this again is something which Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy also said. The best thermometer to the progress of a nation is its treatment of women. And this came up because the women of his time were being ill-treated. He wanted emancipation of women. He was very concerned about the fact that women were not being treated or in the manner they should be treated, and hence he make up these statements. Soul has neither sex nor caste nor not imperfections. Again, since there is an understanding of a larger conscience that exists, he felt that that conscience does not have a sex. So whether it is a man or a woman, they are a part of a larger conscience, and there can't be a discrimination between the two because they are a part of a larger scheme of things. Then educate your women. Now, how do you emancipate women? Again, he was very practical in his approach. He felt that unless you educate women, they will never be emancipated. Mere talking about it doesn't matter. Again, very similar to what Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy said. Educate your women and then leave them. See, they will tell you what reforms are necessary for them. You know, usually what happens is that the men folk decided what should be done for women. Swamiji said, no, let not men decide what should be done done to women. You educate women and they will themselves come up and tell what is good for them and then go by what they are saying rather than men determining, men sitting on a pedestal and deciding what should be done for women folk. He felt that the women need to be educated so that they are in a position to clearly express and explain as to what is good for them. Then perfect womanhood is perfect independence. Without women being emancipated, Swamiji felt there can't be any independence. So womanhood and women need to be emancipated for perfect independence. By and large, what Swamiji was attempting to say here was that you have to look at various aspects of society, various ills that existed in the society, and try and address them through educating people of the society. Through education, there would be a better understanding of each issue and there would be emancipation. This is what Swami Vivekananda said. In the next session, we will touch upon certain other Indian philosophers. Thank you very much.
StudyIQ IAS, आपका सिलेक्शन हमारा मिशन।